In today's tutorial, we're painting this peaceful, misty mountain lake, perfect for beginners. And the best part? There's no sketching needed. You just need a few brushes and three colors. So let's get started. For the start of the painting, we got some Paynes Grey here mixed up there and plenty of water, which we'll be coming on to later. But for now, we've just got clear water over the surface of the paper. This is Fabriano Artistico 140 pounds, so it's taped down on all sides. You can bring that water all the way down because when we do various stages, including the sky and the mountain, we don't want any harsh lines appearing. So having done that, we want quite a subdued sky. It's not going to compete with the landscape. Therefore, we don't need major cloud formations and detail, etc. Just a grey tone. Then I've dried that off with a hairdryer and I'm laying down some water for the distant mountains. I've used the brush to indicate where the tops of the mountains will be, and then the rest I bring water down quite a way because I then use the Paynes Grey to start at the very top of the mountain range, and here using a smaller brush, something like a number 8, and start at the top and let it fuse into the clear water to give that misty effect at the base of the mountain range. So continue with that. You don't need to keep dipping in to the colour. Just use what's there to gradually pull it down into the clear water and give you that misty effect. You can then add some misty trees whilst it's still wet, still using your Paynes Grey mixture. And as I said, if you wish to mix Paynes Grey with some Winsor Blue, then you could do so. So use a smaller brush to indicate those distant trees. And if you find you've got too much liquid on the brush, as you might have seen just then you can mop up from your brush. You can use a tissue to mop and reduce the amount of water and pigment on your brush. And then you have more control. And of course, if the mixture is stronger to start with, it will move less um, on the water that you laid down. But we want a misty effect. Therefore, I've purposefully not mixed it too strong. I know it looks strong on the palette, but as you can see, when you lay that down together with the clear water that's already there, it very much does diffuse and becomes very light. And as always, do bear in mind that when we dry off with the hairdryer, it will be lighter still. So my aim here is to make sure that we do retain that misty area at the base of the mountains. I'm just strengthening up a little bit at the tops of mountains and pulling down some of the pigment. So I had more of a contrast where it meets the sky at the peak areas. Once again, something you can do because you have laid down that water first of all. So don't lose any of that misty area at the base. And continue laying down those trees. Now, some of these, as you'll see as the painting progresses, will be covered here and there with darker trees in the middle ground and foreground. So we're still dealing with a distant situation and emphasizing that distance by less detail and a misty feel. And as you can see, some of those distant trees are more detailed, some less detailed, etc. So now we've dried that off and it is much lighter. And we've laid down some underpainting, green and yellow, and then dried that off and we're paying attention to the stream. So we did some negative painting there for the banks, leaving the white of the paper for the stream. And then we've gone to something like a number 8 brush and we're laying down some of that water area of the stream with our Paynes Grey. So this part of the painting is still quite subdued at this stage. A lot of people don't pay attention enough to the fact that with transparent watercolor, it's very much more desirable if you do underpainting and you build up. And remember, we build up from lighter areas to darker areas. So that's our underpainting for the stream, and dry that off. And now we can continue with some further colors for the banks on either side of the stream. You got a mixture of your Winsor Yellow and your Winsor Blue, etc. You mix up the greens. If you use Winsor Blue and Winsor Yellow, but you want a more olive type color green, then you can add a tiny touch of red to it, such as the Scarlet Lake, and that will make it more an olive finish instead of a brighter green. It would dull it down. So both of those banks, underpainting wise, are nearly completed. Just neatening up here and there, and then dry with the head dryer. Then we're getting into more of the top coats, if you like. We're got stronger greens, and we're using a flat brush because we want to indicate tall grasses and so forth, and the flat brush is ideal for that. And you can use the scraping technique here and there as well, where you lightly touch the paper, drag the brush across, and leave broken lines, etc. Making use of the texture of the paper. This paper is rough texture, as I mentioned. I find it's not quite as rough in texture as the Arches 300 pound and the Arches 140 pound, but it still has enough tooth to enable you to complete various techniques, such as the scraping technique. One of my videos, actually, as a tutorial, does compares the two papers, the Arches versus the Fabriano Artistico, and I do the same painting alongside both types of paper so you can compare. So you're now just building up darker areas, leaving gaps in between. Otherwise, what's the point of doing the underpainting? If you totally go over that, then you could have just done one bland color to start with. But we want variation. And once again, using the flat brush is ideal for this, as you can see, as is being demonstrated in this tutorial. Please remember to like and subscribe because it does help us. If we can have you do that and more people do so, then we're more likely to get more viewing hours of our tutorials. And it means that when we upload a new tutorial, we can immediately notify you of the fact. So at this stage, there will be quite a bit of repetition. So you'll see here and there, like we did then, that will jump around a little bit. Some parts will be completed, and because it's repetitive, we don't have to show every part of that painting being executed. Otherwise, the video could be much longer. It could be a 1.5 hour, 2 hour video, something like that. And um, instead of 20 minutes. Now you've got much thicker paint, so more pigment, less water being applied to show the trees in greater detail, and they're stronger because they're closer. And a couple of them a little bit fainter in the semi-distance, as you can see that we're building up now. And use that side-to-side scraping technique when painting these trees. So there's little bit broken areas. Now it's up to you whether you wish, as a guide, to paint in some of the trunks first, with little gaps here and there, and then do the foliage. Your choice. And do remember that at the very tops it's very thin, hardly any foliage at the top there. It's much more convincing that way. And because it's out in the wild, somewhere like Montana, um, the weather effects have taken place. Branches are uh, blown off and bent and so forth. Some going in one direction, some in another. But that's because we're in the wild situation rather than a kept landscape area. So do that. Make sure you have variation, lots of variation. It's much more interesting that way. So for the stream, I would suggest using a flat brush again to enable you to do more detail and keep control compared to using a round brush. And here and there, have less water on there, more pigment, and scrape along, use the texture, the roughness of the paper to help you achieve more convincing results. And remember that things get fainter and thinner as they progress into the distance. So darker and thicker in the foreground on that stream, and then fainter and thinner as it goes into the distance. And you'll see I'm mixing up some dark color here for the banks. We want a good demarcation there between the stream and the banks. And here and there you'll see, which is quite useful, and it was the reality of the situation, there's little rocks here and there in the water, which enables us to show a nice contrast. That's always good in a painting, if you can show contrast and detail like that to have it much more interesting and convincing. I think you would agree that this type of painting is representational with a dose of impressionism. We're not aiming to achieve a photographic finish. It's a painting. And hopefully you will agree that it's atmospheric, with that mist in the distance, especially. It's quite simple. It's a small piece of paper. It can be something like 7.5 by 5. Then we got some more defined ripples taking place. Here on this occasion, I've now gone to a very small round brush, something like a number 2 for those lines. And you've got some darker areas around the rocks. And also remember that we do encourage your suggestions for future tutorials and suggestions you may have as to locations or types of paintings. There are over 200 videos now on our channel, and we have over 15,000 subscribers. So I've got the small brush again now and dropping in some of those darks on either side of the bank, strands of grass and quite substantial clumps here and there. Once again, given that nice contrast because we worked from light to dark, but making sure we left plenty of the light in between. So here we have the finished painting. I hope you've enjoyed that and that you'll give it a go. And I look forward to seeing you next time.